All right, welcome. This is our last contracts class for the month of July. And so we're just going to knock this out. We're going to see if we can get all the way through the RLA. We're also going to touch on the exclude from MLS and the details of how to find it, what to do with it once you get it. So if you've got a listing you're going to exclude, we'll touch on what that needs to be. Am I recording? Hold on.
Hello.
Hey, Owen, did you see you had a check up front?
I did.
Okay, so we're recording. All right, it's been a couple of weeks since we've been here, so I'm just going to start from the top, and then we'll just post this on the YouTube channel. Keep in mind, I've got a YouTube channel for KWRCC Broker, so if you need to watch these recordings on YouTube, I'm going to be doing them by special topic. If some question comes up more than once, and I think it's recording worthy or video worthy, I'll just record it and then post it on that channel, so you'll have different topics available over there. Just like the RPA, the RLA starts with the AD, the agency disclosure. You'll want to touch on the specific details of the responsibilities of the seller's agent, and then also let them know in the event that you represent both buyer and seller that you've got a higher level of duty because you have fiduciary for both sides of the transaction, in addition to reasonable scale and care. And this ties through to the professional standards code written specifically in the state law with regards to real estate agents. And so page 2, when we scroll over to that, is the actual civil code as it appears on the books for the state of California. And rather than trying to have real estate agents explain the code to the consumer, they've come up with this document. This document, the AD, has been developed by the state of California. 2 forms that were developed by the state of California that have been handed to us to use, the TDS and the AD. So all the others, the AVID, the SPQ, those are all developed by the Forms Committee and the attorneys at Carlegal once they review it, once they develop it. So the AD is not put together by a bunch of agents or the CAR attorneys. This is the state of California saying, we want you to review this with your customer. The intent of the AD is to be delivered at first point of contact. So whether you're first meeting with the seller face-to-face or otherwise, or your first meeting with a buyer, that's the state's intention for you to deliver that and get that AD signed. So if you're showing half a dozen houses to somebody, the state anticipates that you're going to have them sign that AD on that first house, that first face-to-face meeting, and describe to them what your duties are as an agent, state of California. And most people get it signed when they put their offer together, when they put the listing presentation or listing together. But ideally, you want to do that earlier in the process. Again, on the buyer's side, it kind of acts as a light version of a buyer representation agreement because you're laying out what your responsibilities are as an agent for them. And when I go to work for you, this is what I'm going to do, kind of thing. And they will have signed something with you. And a lot of agents will say, are you working with another agent? And that gives your clients or the customers something to say, yes, I do. They'll say, did you sign anything with that agent? And they can say, yes, I signed something. Now, most agents are not going to say, can you show me a copy of what that document is? Most agents will be like, well, they signed something, I'm out. And you can potentially, I mean, if you protect one deal a year as a result, so much the better, right? So use the AD for what it's good for, and you're getting people used to signing stuff. Possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. It's a brief explanation, basically to say Keller Williams is a very large brokerage. Keller Williams Ritchie Central Coast has 135 agents, give or take, at any time. The Paso Robles franchise has 35 to 60 at any time. And so there's a good number of agents associated with the company, and there's a possibility in that somebody down the street is going to list with Keller Williams. And so although we have an exclusive listing contract, that's exclusive between me as the agent and you as the consumer. It's not exclusive to the office. You're not going to be the only one in this neighborhood potentially listing with Keller Williams. Signing here acknowledges that you understand that's the way it is. Wire fraud advisory, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. There really isn't much opportunity for wire fraud on the seller side of a transaction. They're not sending money in, and it would be the title company screwing up wiring money to the seller. in a listing situation. I don't spend a whole lot of time in a listing presentation about the wire fraud advisory, other than to say we're on top of it, and this advisory also goes to the buyer. They're the ones that need to be more concerned with the wire fraud. Residential listing agreement, all of your modification of terms, when we get to that point, any modifications that you do to the listing agreement in the future, whether it's price changes, extension, change of expiration date, cancellation of the contract, will all tie back to the date prepared. Let me see if I can highlight this so we have it on video. So that date prepared, let's say I was getting ready to go out and do a listing presentation back in June. I had this printed, ready to go, ready to sign. They decided for whatever reason that they were going to wait and do something to the property, and we're going to come back to that later. If I never change really anything to this contract, and then they call me now, and at the end of July, a month later, and they say, okay, we're ready to sign it, send it, I can go ahead and leave that date alone. But if there's changes, material changes, say we're going to change the commission from 6% to 5%, or we're going to change something in the listing terms where I'm going to put up a half sheet plywood, 4x4 sign on the property so that it can be seen from the freeway or whatever, and that's going to be part of it, then I'm going to change this date prepared because that's a material change, and that for me in my head tells me this is the updated version that has the promise for the sign or reduced commission. Does that make sense? It doesn't come up as often as it does with the RPA. The RLA, there's not a lot of opportunities usually to change that or reason to change that. You're going to put in here who all the sellers are. You can put up to 4 people in this contract. You can put first and last name of one person and then the comma, first and last name for another person, and load those in. If you have more than that, you need to do the additional signature addendum, and that adds all that in. And that just puts these people in by name. If it's owned by a trust or otherwise, we're going to go over that RCSD document when we all get back together in September. That'll be the beginning of our discussion in September.
If there's more than one, or if there's more than 2 buyer or seller, they initial off to the side, right? Like next to the little initial button, next to the bottom of the page.
If you're going to fill in, if you get there and realize there's another seller beyond, so we have Mike and Molly Miller are the seller. Is that?
There's like 3 sellers, and it's like at the bottom of the page, there's only two lines for a signature and 2 boxes for initial. You just do it next to each other. I know for a signature, right? But okay. On the initial one, you just do it next to it, off to the side somewhere.
Yep. Hold on. I'm going to stop the video on that one. So yes, if there's more than one person, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. We're not too bad. So at the bottom of the page, there's an opportunity for seller to initial. Anywhere in this blank space is where the initials can go. So if there are 3 or 4 or 6 or whatever, everybody can initial in that space as long as you don't cover any of the text. If the signatures or initials start to cover the text, then you've got a problem, because it could come up in court that they didn't have the opportunity to read the document in its entirety. They were limited from reading it and therefore should not be held to it. And that's what it is. So our CA, our attorneys say, anytime you have multiple signatures in any of our documents, as long as that DocuSign can fit, as long as their hand signature can fit and not overlap on top of the text, you're fine. So I haven't used the ASA in a long time. That additional signature addendum, it's probably been since 2012, since I've started using DocuSign, because you can always fit extra people into DocuSign. That's it. I'm not going to worry about some weird thing that came up once in my life. Listing period. We've got some details on the listing period, so you usually want to give yourself a little bit of time. I do anyway. I try to put properties active on Thursdays because it'll show up in Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com as a new property for 24 to 48 hours after it goes on the market. If you list it on a Monday or Tuesday, the high traffic days of the weekend, it's going to be just a regular old property, and it won't be flagged as new. You only get flagged then from there on when you do price reductions. So most, I don't know, there are some pretty savvy agents that I know that I've learned from Florida and Arizona and other places where they put a lot of properties on. Most agents will target Thursday or Friday for listings to go on new. Just as an FYI. So I will look at whatever the Thursday is and mark that as my day, keeping in mind that if I'm meeting on, I don't know, this was June 26th, but if I'm meeting on the 23rd and my listing doesn't start until the 26th, you do potentially have a 3-day window where an agent could come in and say, I'm going to list it, and they can jump in line in front of you if their effective date is ahead of yours.
They'd have to cancel this listing.
This listing you'd have to cancel this agreement. But it never got started, so it's an easy one you can't have spent any money yet. Or
start it now and get an exclusion from the MLS.
Potentially, yes. Depends on you.
What do you mean by that? Because if we sign the listing today, but we're excluding it for 3 days.
Now, exclusion from MLS is different than the actual beginning date of your contract. So
I mean, you put it on the MLS, it'll be 3 days on market.
It is.
If your contract starts today, they're going to exclude it from the MLS.
yeah, it depends on your date. So today is July 24, right? Right, July 24th. So if you signed a listing agreement today and the effective date was today, but you didn't put it on the MLS for a week, you would have to determine that in the exclude from MLS form, whether or not you're marketing it. If you're marketing the property for that week, whether it's in-house or not, you tell one person about it, technically you're marketing it. So when it goes on to the market next week, it starts with 7 days on market.
Mm-hmm.
The marketing days accumulate during that time period. And we'll touch on that. We should have time at the end of this to get into either the SELM, which is a weaker document, or the CRMLS exclusion form, which is a little more detailed. But what I'm talking about here is the beginning date of your listing period. You have 24 hours to put your listing in the MLS and 48 hours to put a picture of the front of the home on the MLS from the beginning date of your listing.
Okay.
So if you're going to do a big song and dance and do a big splash with your property when it comes on the market, you can do one of two things. Either you list it effective today and do the hold from MLS, so you get the photography and the stager and the cleaning crew and the put your flyers together and get them printed on cardstock and get all your big stuff that you're going to do. You can do it that way, or you can post date, essentially, put the date into the future, pre-date, I suppose, move that forward a week into advance, so that gives you time to do all those things that you were going to do. And then when your property goes active on the market in a week, and you have your photography and your flyers and all your song and dances already put together, then it shows up on the market as 0 days on market. It's a fresh, hot new property. And that's just a timing issue for you. What do you want it to look like on the MLS? How much time do you want to give yourself? Knowing that whatever the time period is from today until the listing goes active in the market is a time where somebody could come in and either steal the listing from you, or the seller could change their mind and cancel that agreement, and we haven't done anything on it. So there are a couple different schools of thought, right? Chris and I follow Bob Leffler through Fearless Agent, and he says, list it tonight, get it on the market tonight. No photo is fine, get it on. Price it awesome so that you get people scheduling showings the next morning. Doesn't get the seller doesn't have a chance to change their mind. If they're skittish at all, if you know you're dead solid, there are some listings that I get. I've been working on this listing for years with the seller. They're 100% committed to me. I have the listing. And especially once we sign it, I'm comfortable dating that into the future so that I can get my whole song and dance put together and make sure I put it on the market on the right date and everything's in place, ready to go. There are sellers who they're a little skittish, and I want to get them on the market like tonight, because when I start working on that and show them that I'm working and start having showings so they don't have an opportunity to change their mind.
And you did that one time with a seller that you thought was committed to you, and word got out to another agent, and he went in and stole that listing from you. Remember?
Well, yeah, that was a different situation, but yeah, that was a referred lead that came to me, and the nature of the referral was such that I didn't feel comfortable pushing them to sign tonight and put it on the market tonight. They didn't actually sign with me that night. It was unsigned. And so I didn't start working on it yet, but another agent came in and was able to take that listing, which sucks, but that's life. Any questions so far about the date and how it works? Generally, we see 6-month listings with residential contracts. You can do 90 days if you like. It's your business. You want to do a 30-day listing, put a bunch of work into something and have it expire in 30 days, that's fine with me too. On land, I would recommend at least 12 months, if not 24. How long did it take us to sell Colony?
364 days.
Yeah, almost 364 days. I have a lot in Morro Bay that we listed originally for a year. I've gotten 1 6-month extension so far. If you're listing land, plan on it being on the market for a good long time, regardless of pricing. Oh, and how long did that lot down on Farrell end up staying on the market for you? 260.
Okay.
So a lot of days. Land tends to take a while. And so plan on that longer time period. But I do 6-month listings on residential and single family and condos and things of that nature, investment properties, and then land is at least 12 months. I'm not going to spend any money on it unless I know I've got a good long time to market it and promote the property. You'll want to put in a property address, APN number, assessor parcel. You do need to pull, and it's actually in your ICA agreement. Not a lot of people know that, but you'll need to pull a property profile from either Realist or Fidelity Title, Fidelity Passport, or what's First American has their Eagle. MyFirstAm.com. Placer, I'm sure, has one. There's all kinds of them, but you need to pull that record and save it as a PDF if you're digi, or print it out if you're old school like me.
For what?
You need to be able to show that you saw the property profile, and you need to make sure that whoever you're meeting with is the name of the person that's on the title. That would have sidestepped the issue that we had with Our Lady in Santa Maria. However, her name was the name on the trust, so we figured she was fair to sign. But as it turns out, her mom owns the trust, and she's crazy. So next step on this one is to put in the price. When you drop this in, you put the price. Here, I'm pointing with my finger. Here we go. For those of you at home, when you type in the price, the words will backfill. So you don't need to worry about typing 630,000. No, it takes that away from you. Can't make that mistake. 6%. We don't have a set percentage at the brokerage. We can't demand that. It's potentially antitrust law and blah, blah, blah. But you have your going rate of what you charge for what you do. If property is going to be on the market a long time, if you're going to spend a heroic amount of money trying to promote the property, if you've got a big commission that you're going to give up as a referral, you can make adjustments to that commission amount. And as long as the seller agrees to it, you're fine. We listed that condo up in Shell Beach for 7% because we had a 35% referral fee. And we list all of our short sales at 7 because we have to give up 1% to the negotiator, and then that leaves 3 or 2.5% for those of us who are left standing at the end of that deal.
Because of base, right? You're supposed to get approval if you take less than 2%.
Exactly. So if you, when we're lowering commission for varying circumstances, keep in mind, we did the research, and a lot of you were here for that. We did the research to see in 2018 in 5 cities, how many of those deals that closed were 2.5% commission. 90% of them were 2.5% co-op for the buyer's agent. That is the going rate for a buyer's agent.
2.5 or more.
2.5 or more. There was very little at 3% and very little at 2%. And there were some dippity doos that did like 2.25. But the bulk of that is the expectation of a buyer's agent in this region is 2.5. Now you get to Santa Maria, about half of those listings that sold were 2%, and the other half were 2.5 or more.
Only
half? Half. The reality was half. There are a crap ton of listings down there that end up getting double-ended as well. So who knows what that end result is. When we're talking about commission, the office policy, if you will, we have the expectation, we're a full-service brokerage, and we're going to expect the buyer's agent to be a full-service agent as well. And so we have every intention of, and our policy is, that you're going to give them 2.5% on their side. If it's ever less than 2.5% for co-op, you need to give me a heads up, because I will get calls from brokers saying, what's the deal with so-and-so, your agent listing this house over here on this street at 2%. If they want to get more than 2%, then they would have to send in a commission agreement and be part of the deal, But your contract that you have with Keller Williams says you're going to list it 2.5% to the buy side and nothing less than 2% on the list side. So by contract, as a full service brokerage, the least we'll allow to list for is 4.5.
If you don't recommend 50/50?
No. Because if you're taking decreased commission, it's you that needs to suffer, not the buyer's agent. It's not their fault.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're getting 6%, why aren't you offering 3%?
If I'm getting 6%, there's some other circumstance and I'm paying 2.5. If you want to split it 50/50, that's fine if you're going to get additional traction as a result. But I saw no correlation whatsoever when I was looking at the actual data. There was no correlation between days on market, speed, price discount, nothing. I couldn't connect anything. So 3% is just throwing half a point away. That's what I found. And you run it, like I said, you guys are running your own little businesses within the brokerage, but I don't care. If you list it at 6 and you keep 3.5% yourself, I am perfectly fine with that. As long as we have 2.5 going to the buy side, that's the expectation in the market. Or if you list it at 7 and you keep 4.5, I don't care. However you can get away with it. However you want to run your business. With that being the floor. If you're selling grandmama's property and you want to list it for 1% on your side and 2.5 for the other agent, you call me and say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, call Jay, call DC. I need to get office. You need Jay to approve that. Most times he will. And if you're selling your own property, you'll need to talk to DC because we do no company dollar, but there is RCF and royalty and right, DC, there's some other circumstances that go into that. And the zero company dollar makes agents think that if they're going to sell their own home, they don't owe anybody anything, and that's not the case. You still have to pay your TC, you still have to pay regulatory and compliance, and you still have to pay KW International.
So they say take no commission. You can work it out, but they take the exact amount of commission necessary to pay the fees. So
That's correct. Yeah.
only money out of pocket.
Unless you're capped, you always have RCF, regulatory and compliance. It ends up being, it's 1.5%, is that right? Whatever the 1.75. So that pays me $50 per transaction. It pays Nicole Wood $25 per transaction to review the file. It pays for our E&O insurance policy. It pays for our E&O, it collects money for deductible paying.
Usually a couple $100, right?
It's usually a couple $100. But we've had some big deals that it's like, you get 20, 30,000 in commission. 1.5% of that's a big chunk. Yeah.
For RCS?
Yeah. The ALC has, over the years, the ALC has looked at capping that RCF amount, and they've decided not to so far.
What's $1,000 1% of?
Somebody do the math. I can't do math while I'm trying to present. But yeah, $1,000 RCF does seem a little on the steep side. Considering your broker's only getting $50, you should pay your broker more.
$1,000 is that?
$10.
No. What is $1,000?
$1,000 is 1.75% of what number? We'd have to do some algebra, but we figure it out. You're a finance major, aren't you, Owen?
Well, yeah.
You had a boy. So Molly has a finance question for you. Math in real life.
0.75%.
Of what number?
2%.
2% of $1,000.
No, I said, what is $1,000 2% of?
50,000.
Oh, okay. No, that makes sense.
50,000 in commission. So it's a $2 million deal. It has a $1,000 RCF fee. So that's our discussion on commissions. If you're doing anything less than 2.5% to the buy side, you need to call me. And if you're doing anything less than 2% on the listing side, you need to call me. Okay? I need to know about it. I will fight for you. I will stick up for you. I will, do whatever I can do as a broker out in the world. You don't want it to be like, 4% going to you and 1% going to the co-op agent. That's going to endear you zero with your
So if you're doing like
co-ops.
off-market deal where you just help them walk it through escrow, doing the paperwork for a pre-procured buyer and seller, you charge like 2% to handle the paperwork?
I've done as little as 3 generally.
Okay.
So if you do if you wrap up both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Generally what we do is we list them at 6. If we're doing a referral, we keep 3.5. And otherwise we'll keep, so I'm generally listing at 6, keeping 3.5, giving 2.5 to the other side. I'll pay whatever referrals I've got and marketing off of that 3.5%. And then if we double end that deal, we'll write it into the contract that we take 4% if Scott Taylor represents both buyer and seller, or Scott and Molly represent both buyer and seller. Just drop it to that. If you've got a seller that you've been working with and they're trying to sell by owner, and they come to you and you bring them a buyer and you're like, pay me 3% for my buyer, and they'll say, I'll give you 2.5%, but if you do it for 3, you can take both sides of it. That's a good idea anyway, to get both sides. So at least get another 0.5 point for that second side. So 3% double end, but I got to know about it. We've got when you double end a deal, you've got additional liability, you got additional exposure, especially when you're dealing with a for sale by owner, because they think they can not disclose. They think they're fine doing that, right? Buyer beware. You'll hear that with these old guys that are trying to for sale by owner. Well, it's buyer beware. It's an as-is sale. Well, yeah, but you still got to disclose. Let them know that there's 41 disclosures required with most transactions, potentially 41 disclosures required, and additional documents with a residential purchase. Commercial is 18. 41 signature spots and documents where a buyer and seller need to sign. That was from my risk management class last week. That's why I wasn't here. This 180 here, this paragraph ties to the temptation of buyers and sellers to get together and circumvent the realtor force. And so since we have the seller under contract exclusively to be paid for listing and selling their property, we're going to protect that. And what this 180 days says is, at the end of the listing, either with a cancellation date or the date it expires, I'm going to provide you a list of persons who have seen the house as a result of my marketing, or they've seen it based on the MLS and they've come through some other agent. So you provide them with that list, and on the cancellation of contract, there's a few lines available, or you can do a Word document or an email, some way that you deliver that list to them on or before that date of expiration or cancellation. And for 180 days, if any of those persons on that list purchase the property, we, Keller Williams, are owed the commission as it's stated in the MLS or in this agreement or on the cancellation.
Is that 180 days for Keller Williams thing? Can I put 90 days?
90 days is generally what I do. 180 days is a long time to sort of lay claim to a buyer that came as a result of your marketing. We all know that most of the response to marketing happens within that first 30 days. And so is there a possibility that towards the end of the listing, you're going to do one last big push and market the hell out of it just for getting buyers, and you get a handful of buyers, and then the seller's hanging around after the showing, the buyers drive back by, and the seller says, oh, I'm going to cancel tomorrow, or I'm going to expire tomorrow, come by and see me. As long as you have that person on that list and that name is there, you want to have a conversation with the seller about that list. But we've had a number of agents, not in this room, but around, that have approached me and said, I don't have a good relationship with the seller, but one of those buyers from that list has come back around. Can you help me walk through this transaction? And the brokerage can either take over or help along to kind of smooth things over. They're actually, in that cancellation agreement, there's really no obligation for the seller to select you to represent them, but it's all tied to payment of that commission. So most of us will represent them as a result of getting paid. We're going to work for the pay that we get, but it's not necessarily tied to it. And you can chase them down after the close as well. So as long as you provided that list, if the commission is over $10,000, we're going to go to mediation, and then we'll go either arbitration or litigation, depending on which direction we want to go. That make sense? So if you're not going to collect the list of buyers that come, and you're not going to enforce this, then you can just leave that 180, what we have here, 180 or 90 or 60 or 30, you can just leave that blank. Oop, I try and highlight it, and it does the whole, there, 180. So there is no policy on that. Again, it's you running your business. Is this something that you would want to enforce? Are you going to collect the names of the buyers? Are you going to go through that hassle? My mobile home over in Napomo, I'm not going through the hassle. I'm not collecting the name of each buyer. Don't care. I don't know how to say that in Spanish, but yo no care at all. No soy. Okay? Any questions? You got to provide the list on or before cancellation or expiration. That's the key. I got to close this because I'm hearing chatting in one ear. I know it's warm. Okay, we're going to touch on this. We touched on it briefly because it's the conversation that you have with the seller is 6% overall, 3% goes to the buyer's agent. And then that's when they'll push. You need to be ready with your objection handlers or whatever, or be able to provide additional value for the commission, however it is. Again, we've had that conversation, so that's going to the buyer.
Okay. So if they don't question your commission or anything, you have to disclose what you charge.
Well, yeah, you're going to walk them through the contract.
Got it. Okay.
So you're going to say, the commission to get the property sold is 6%, 3% goes to the buyer's agent. I pay them out of the gross commission.
Got it. Okay.
Or our brokerage pays, make sure that they get paid. You have no additional, sometimes they'll add those two together and they'll go, 9%, you're killing me. You know, no. It pays, it's out of what you're paying me. There's a paragraph F. So seller represents they've not previously entered into a listing agreement except as follows. So if they have and it's canceled or expired, they do need to disclose that they've had a listing agreement with somebody else previously. That's the trigger for you to say, did they provide you with a list before or on the date that it expired and or canceled? Our sellers in our area are pretty savvy people. They're going to interview 2 or 3 people at the first. They're going to select one, and it's either going to cancel or expire. If it does expire, they've probably got somebody in their pocket that they're ready. And if you're that person, they're going to call you and have you out, and you can talk to them about future business. We're not talking about canceling the current listing. We're talking about future business, perfectly allowable. And they'll say, when this expires in 2 weeks or a month or whenever, I'm going to sign up with you. But you know already that this paragraph F needs to be filled in with whatever the brokerage is, and that has a conversation then to say, I need to see that list of people, because in the event that one of those parties comes back and wants to buy this property, we're going to either owe full commission to the original listing agent or a referral fee of some sort. And don't let that catch you by surprise. Don't get stuck by that. And that sucks, but you're going to know up front, because this is where they go. Seller warrants that they have no obligation to pay compensation to any other broker regarding the property unless the property is transferred to any of the following individuals or entities, and that's the list.
So if you take that expired listing, it's possible you get nothing.
It's possible.
Right.
Most often, it's an agreement. It's a chit chat between me and the previous broker. That agent makes a complaint for blah, 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 and they want to represent the seller. You know, the seller has a say-so in it with who they want to represent them at that point. But most often, it's a referral fee of 25 to 30% generally, sort of a kiss goodbye for them to put toward their marketing or whatever it is. It's pretty rare. We did 660-something transactions last year, and I probably saw this happen 3 times that I knew about between the 2 brokerages that I was running at the time. So it's pretty rare, but it does happen. So this is, again, these paragraphs are set up so that you have this conversation with your seller. I need to know if you've been previously listed with somebody else. And if it's more than a year ago, I wouldn't worry about putting that in. That list is most likely expired completely. Most agents will put 90 to 180 days in that field regarding to the list of the people who've seen it who might circumvent. But it's possible. I mean, somebody might put 365 in there. But once it's a year old, I'm not worried about it. We're talking now paragraph 4A and B. We're talking about items included and excluded from. So you get a chance to chat with your seller and say, do you plan on leaving the washer and dryer behind? Are you selling the house with the nanny cam system, or the next doorbell system? Next doorbell? Did I do that right? Ring doorbell, maybe? Nest. Oh, that's why. Nest. Oh, Nest is thermostat. Ring doorbell. Well, I was making it up anyway. So these are the items that are excluded. So you want to know that. You put it in the MLS that the beautiful doorbell at the front is going to be removed and replaced with something else. Sellers generally don't want to pull that until they're done. They want to know who's coming and going. They want a picture of what's happening. Your lockbox is high tech, and they know that, but their Ring doorbell is higher tech than that. But they are leaving the refrigerator in the kitchen and in the garage. If they're leaving the refrigerator, make sure you know which one and how many there are. There's sometimes a refrigerator out by the hot tub or out by the barbecue, a little mini fridge out there, a little kegerator maybe. And then you've got the fridge in the garage and the one in the kitchen, and who knows, right? The college-age son has one up in his room. Just delineate which is included and excluded. It comes down, sometimes it comes down to the fridge. And what's happening with the fridge? Had sellers that wanted to take their fridge because they knew it was old and beat up, but the outside of it looked really pretty. All the drawers are broken, stuff doesn't slide around on the inside, but the buyers wanted it. They're like, we want the fridge, we want the fridge. You're like, no, it's beat up. We don't want to give it to you. It came down to it. The buyers are like, well, if we don't get the fridge, we're not buying the house. Okay, take the crappy fridge. I had buyers who didn't want the fridge, but the seller had already left it behind. They'd already moved away. So guess who's out there with his pickup truck taking away the old fridge? Handyman Sam, Craigslist, baby. Leased or not owned systems. Sometimes you're at a listing appointment in the evening. You may not have a chance to look at the roof when you walk up. This is a chance for you to talk to them about their solar system or the hot water heater, or no, what's it called? Water softener, the RO system, other items that might be leased. Maybe that mechanical doggy door in the corner was set up and is on some sort of lease agreement. You never know. So you have that conversation with them, find out what those leases are. If you can get a copy of the lease, that's great. Get it up front so you understand what the transfer would be. Like Sunrun, we have a short sale with Sunrun solar panels. And we're like, you need to take these solar panels off because we're not going to be able to sell it with them on there. HOA is $400-something bucks, and then the solar panel fee is another $300, and nobody in this neighborhood is able to afford that. Moving in on the short sale, can't get an offer to stick because the people who can afford to live in that neighborhood or drawn to that neighborhood can't afford the other payment. $700 a month is a big stroke on top of what your mortgage is. So Sunrun said, no, we won't take it away. It has to be this way. And so hopefully, I haven't gone through the contract with the agent. Hopefully it's in there as leased system. Solar's the biggie right now. And if it's owned, we would love to see something that proves that it's an owned system. Sometimes there's a hook in there where that's some sort of ownership and lease, or it's a, what do they call those loans? Molly, what was that loan? PACE loan. There's PACE loans, Hero loan. That it's a grant, but if the property gets sold, then that loan gets paid off. There's some weird stuff that goes on with solar. So try and get copies of whatever it was they signed when they signed up for solar. You put in there whichever multiple listing service it's going to be a part of. You can put CRMLS, you can put Matrix. Oh, this computer's going crazy. You can put CRMLS in there, which is the name of the MLS service. Matrix is the software, cloud-based software that runs the home search side of things. Either one will work. If you are also going to put it in the Santa Maria Flex, so if it's a Napomo home, for example, you're going to probably want to put it in both. Put it in North Santa Barbara County, or if you're a member of Lompoc, or if you're a member of Santa Barbara, or whatever, you put it in each of the MLSs that you're a member of. You want to list those there. If they're opting out of the MLS, we need to go through this language with them if they're going to exclude from the MLS. But especially if they're going to exclude, but they need to initial that they've had a chance to know that the best way to get eyeballs on property is to have it in the MLS. That's the reason why we exist, is to promote those properties and help them get it sold. There are some disclosures that we have with them about availability on the MLS, address on the MLS. So we've had a couple of times where landowner owns like 40 or 50 acres, has some weird buildings that he's built on there without permits. And so he didn't want his address to be on the MLS. But it has to be on the MLS to be tied to the address on the map. So as you know, when you first go put an MLS listing in, you have to move the PIN and put in what the address is. So, and the address will autofill based on the APN. So there's no way to sell it using an agent without disclosing what the address is. He was afraid that the county would chase him down with the MLS and find out what he's got out there. It's not likely, but there's no way around it. You can opt out of features if they don't want it to be placed on Trulia. If you're listing a property that is tenant occupied, you're going to want to make sure that you take that extra step and have a discussion with the tenant and see if they have any preference on whether or not you put pictures of their personal items on the MLS. Funny that that's the case. You have people with $1 million homes that show all this fancy stuff that they've got to the entire world, but the guy with the rickety RCA TV in the corner doesn't want his nice stuff on the MLS. I've seen weird stuff happen. Keep in mind too that, especially with tenants, but with homeowners, they may not want you to do an interior video. They may not want that information to be available to the world. The location of their children's rooms. They may not want you to take pictures and put on the MLS of their children's rooms. And it's best to know that up front before it's posted and out there. And then you got to go back and try and reel that back. Good luck trying to pull a photo off of Zillow because it's got little Johnny's picture of his wall and his name and his photos on there. And they didn't want it.
But if they didn't want to sell it, you have like someone's kid's name on the wall, take it down.
Well, that's their idea. But if they don't want to take down their kid's name, if they want to remind Johnny that his name is Johnny every day when he wakes up, that's none of my business. But I'm going to ask them, you've got 3 children. I would like to be able to put pictures of each of those rooms on the MLS so that people know what those rooms look like before they come. But they are children's rooms, and I want to make sure that you're comfortable with that. Is that okay? And they'll tell you yes or no. It's a chance for you to have that conversation. Broker's duties. Broker agrees to exercise reasonable effort and due diligence with purposes to achieve this agreement. The seller is giving the written instructions. Unless given written instructions to the contrary, the broker is authorized but not required to order reports and disclosures, including those specified in 7C coming up. To advertise and market the property by any method in any medium selected by the broker, including MLS and internet, and to the extent permitted by these media, control and disseminate the information submitted to any medium. We're basically given a blanket permission to promote this property in whatever way we see fit, unless they say they want it otherwise. And we can reel it in and change that after the fact, but if you have a specific marketing plan that involves doing something unusual that promotes their property in some way, they may not want it to be, again, interior tour of the property. They may not want you to go Facebook Live and put it out to the internet, what the inside of the house looks like. Have that conversation first. That's part of what makes you special, is all those things that you do. Promote it and make sure that they're fine with it. You have the ability to order reports on their behalf based on this paragraph 7C. So investigations or report. The seller is agreeing within 5 days of the beginning date or of the beginning date of this agreement to pay for the following pre-sale reports. Those of you who have been around a while know that I generally I contact Key Termite. They give me free pest reports and I order that on the behalf of the seller. I have my coupon with my inspector and they do it for free. So I order it on behalf of the seller. If there was a fee due, the seller would have to pay it. Since I told the seller that it was going to be free, if Key Termite decided, oh, no freebies in the month of August, Scott, and I roll forward with it, I would expect to pay that myself. Nothing wrong with that. There is some additional liability if you are paying for home inspection and pest inspection with your name on it, or if you stroke the check to pay for it on behalf of the seller. It's a slight liability. I've done it before, and I will probably do it again. I'm not concerned about that level of liability so much because I think it's important for the seller to know under the skin what their house is going to look like to the market. And if something could be fixed that's going to help improve it or help the accuracy of the negotiation, so much the better. That's my thought. That's my thinking on it. So you don't need to get permission to pay for a home inspection for somebody from me. Oh, man, this computer's being funny. Paragraph 8 talks about the deposit. We have the authorization to accept and hold on the seller behalf any deposit. We know from the RPA discussion that we don't take deposits. I don't hold deposits. I talked to a broker yesterday, one of their agent, a fairly new agent, a buyer wrote a check to the agent. The agent went and put it in their personal checking account. They do, fortunately, but the Department of Real Estate actually allows you to turn yourself in and stuff like that. It's like without repercussion. It's like, whoops, my agent, like, she just didn't, like, the buyer wanted to write a deposit check for whatever reason. They're not going to be around, or if the offer gets accepted, and so they just wrote it out to the agent. The deposit checks, if there is such, need to be written out to the title company that it's going to be held by. We can hold on to that check over a weekend, say. We put it in we have a folder, a method to hold those checks. We have a log, should be with DC. We log the receipt of the check, the number, the name on the check, and who it's written out to, who logged it in. And then we have a log out, so when it goes to get delivered to the title company later or returned back to the buyer, that's the way we do it. But we don't actually cash that check and put it in our account. And neither do you. Neither do you. What's that?
I wouldn't want to accept it at all.
I don't like it, but there are instances where we have accepted. I do it about 2 or 3 times a year, probably.
So bring it to DC.
Bring it to DC if you get it.
I've won so far this year.
Yeah, 1 so far this year. It's about right. 2 a year.
Now it's one and have one tomorrow.
Well, and it's the situation where sometimes the buyers just do this stuff. Like, you go and you're like, and you say, okay, you're going to wire the funds, or you're going to deliver funds directly for your earnest money deposit. You're going to get that to the title company yourself, and you go about your way. You open escrow and you start ordering home inspector, and this kind of stuff goes on, and the buyer shows up at the front desk at 4:45 on a Friday afternoon, leaves the check for you in an envelope, Molly Lannon, and it's their deposit check for Fidelity. Should have gone down either slow or down to AG. By the time you get it and open it, you're like, holy Jesus, I got a check for $5,000 made out to Fidelity. I got all weekend. What do? You're going to call me, and I'm going to say, get in touch with DC. We're going to put it in our trust. We're going to log it in, and then we're going to log it out. And that's what we do. Cool? All right. I really want to get to that hold from MLS, so I'm not going to spend, we're going to boogie a little bit. Security insurance showings of video and audio. It's a paragraph that we need to talk to the seller if they've got nanny cams. I have these tents. These are available at the MLS office in Pismo, San Luis Obispo, Santa Maria. It says, please note, video and/or surveillance with recording capability may be used on these premises. Conversations should not be considered private. You can type this up on your own. You don't have to use this. As you know, if you've attended any casino in Las Vegas, they need to, if they're recording you, they need to notify you twice upon entry of a building. You have a reasonable expectation of privacy inside a building. Outside on the public streets, no reasonable expectation. That's why the paparazzi hangs out there. They can snap all the photos they want. But inside a building, you have a reasonable expectation of privacy, and the federal law says you need to be notified twice if you're going to be recorded. We're not necessarily holding homeowners to that standard, but it would be a good idea to say on a Post-it note or a little note taped next to the doorbell, especially if it's a Ring doorbell, your activity, you know, there are recording devices on the premises, and your activities may or may not be private. You're technically not supposed to record someone's by audio without their permission, but these devices, I mean, Alexa's listening all the time. So if they have an Alexa, or if they have a nanny cam, or if they have some sort of security system or Ring doorbell or any of that kind of stuff, a Nest, if it can record, I don't know if they do, but that's a thermostat, I know, but who knows if it can record. Hell, maybe the refrigerator knows who's opening it. Yeah. But I recommend these. I like these. They're nicely done. I don't have to type anything up and print it and remember whether or not I just put 2 of those inside the house, staple one to the pole next to the front door, and I'm sort of covered as far as that goes.
Well, is it an agent notes that?
Agent notes is a great place. Agent notes is a great place to also put that, but I would still have 2 notices. I like right next to the front door or wherever they're going to be. You can hang a little tag on the lockbox to let the agent know that the premises has recording devices. There is a story, well, I've got a little bit of time. There is a story, it was actually a KW office in Southern California where the team leader was having an affair with a man in listed properties on a regular basis. And he was dating one of the mega agents in the office, who was a woman. So one of those high-end homes that he was having these little liaisons in had a recording device and recorded their whole afternoon together. And everything they did within sight of that camera. There was a big lawsuit and a big settlement, and it was a big brouhaha down there. I think it was a few years ago, but no, he's not still a team leader, but not for KW anyway. But that is kind of the far-reaching sort of ramification, potentially. Those things are recording all the time. We did have an open house where one of our agents was there with a lender, and they were trying to figure out how to turn on the dish TV and get it to the music channels. And they were fooling around with the remote, and the seller called the agent and said, "Put my remote down. You're going to screw up my settings on the TV." Yeah, it's exciting. So I have been in homes listings before previously where I was like going around and I held an open house in somebody else's listing. I didn't realize that there was a recording device on the property. So as I was leaving, I happened to look up and there's a camera there, and I thought, did I do anything? like a risky business sliding across the floor in my underpants. I didn't do any of that, but I thought, oh, I wonder what I did or said during this open house that hopefully the seller's okay with it. So it's good for you to know as well if there's recording. The key thing with photography and internet advertising, sometimes the seller wants to provide you with photos themselves. We do have a photo release document in the CAR forms and zip forms, and they would need to sign a release to you for their photos. If the photos were taken by somebody other than themselves and they were given to the seller, then I would recommend not using those. It's a long ways to go to try and get written permission from the person who took those photos. It is a federal crime. It is copyright infringement or trademark infringement. I don't know which one it is, but it's one of those biggies, up to $1,500 per image that you post on the internet, and you're posting on the internet when you put it in the MLS.
I thought it was 10 grand. I thought it was a $1,500 fine.
$1,500, that's $1,500 per images, and there's no limit to it. So if you go online and you steal that picture of the Pismo clam from some random website, and it belongs to, who is it that does that? It's Getty Images.
Yeah.
Getty Images will chase you down because it has metadata in the photo. And so if you're taking a picture of the Pismo clam or the Pismo pier, you want to snap that photo yourself or have it done by one of the photographers that you pay for the photos and have a document signed.
Because they can charge you,
they can fine you. They basically contact you and say, you're using one of our images without permission, and they have a pre-written cease and desist letter from their attorney and say, we're going to pursue you unless you pay us. And they'll charge you $300 to $500 per image. Getty Images makes a lot of money chasing that kind of stuff down. Because they can just do a search through Google and it hits every single photo everywhere. And so they know what the names of their photos are that they chase, and they'll hit them. So if you're using it for a business purpose or like we do to try and promote a property to get it sold, then they can come after you because you're infringing on their rights to the copyrighted material of that photo, the rights of ownership of that photo. Remember to make sure you talk to the seller about the KeySafe lockbox. Understand how to use your lockbox well enough to know how to modify the time frame of when that box will or will not turn on. I did lose a listing once. When I followed up with them and said, hey, I just want to see if you made your decision, one of the three. And they're like, oh, we went with so-and-so. Your presentation was better and your marketing was better, but she uses the high-tech lockbox with the Bluetooth. And so we decided to list with her because we felt the security was better. Like, we all use the same lockbox. You idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But mention the lockbox. Every listing now I bring one. Ka-choom. See how big and heavy and safe this thing is. I know how to use it. Know what the benefits are to using a lockbox, and know where to hang it. And if you hang it on the gas meter, that gas meter is actually owned by the gas company, and they can come and cut your lockbox off. Or, as in my case, when they're repainting the gas meter, they'll just paint over your lockbox. So I have one lockbox that is just completely gray with this hard enamel paint. They slap tape over their little dials and painted right over my lockbox. It's awesome. It happens to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just lucky. If you're going to write in paragraph 16 is where you're going to put in additional terms. This is where you say if Scott Taylor and or Molly Lannon represent both buyer and seller, gross commission to be 4%. You could also put it up here in paragraph 2B, listing terms. You can put it in either place. This would be a good opportunity for you to have a discussion and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the buyers anticipate that you're going to have the property professionally cleaned prior to close of escrow. And if they say, yeah, I'm planning on doing that, then you go ahead and write that in. And then you can use that to promote the property that the seller is planning on having, right? We went into one today, the carpet's a little bit worse for wear. It does need a little sprucing up, could use some steam cleaning. And the seller said, if we don't end up replacing this, we're going to steam clean the carpet. So we can just let agents know they're going to steam clean the carpet. If you want a credit to get new flooring, then make it part of your offer. So any additional terms with regards to that contract, that's where that additional stuff goes. Management approval. Keep in mind that you have, oh shit, DC, was it 24 or 48 hours to upload? 48 hours, I think you have in your contract. You need to upload your listing agreement so that I can review it. A lot of agents don't do it. They just upload their listing agreement once they go into escrow. But I need to see it. I need to be able to find it. So you need to, we're moving to Command, and so it'll be a lot easier for you to do that. Command is taken over on September 1, right? So far?
Supposed to be ready by September 1 and mandatory by September 15th.
Okay.
So can we just send it to Tiff, or can we
You can send it, yeah, send it. I would send it to your TC. That's what I do. I've never uploaded documents myself. I can set up the systems and I can tell people what to do, but I don't want to screw with it. I pay the people to do what they do. So my time.
Or we get a new listing and say, please upload to .loop?
Yeah, just give it to your TC and say, can you please upload to .loop or whatever the system is going to be called. What are they going to call it? Encore or something like that? It's Command, but the document management.
The section there is called an opportunity. It's an opportunity, which is a kind of silly name, but that's
it's so corporate.
new transaction.
Well, at least we're a tech company.
We had to do that.
Yeah, you do. You have 48 hours to put all contracts that you sign. That you need to upload to so I can review them. And I do. I do review them. Nicole hits all of them, and then if there's something that looks a little wonky, she'll call me in and I'll do a review. So if you get a call from me or a text from me like, "Hey, just reviewed your document. By the way, that's not enforceable because you didn't get signatures in the right place," you're going to be appreciative of me doing my review. Had an agent that did a commission authorization on a FSBO. She's collecting 3% commission, and the broker needs to sign it, but she didn't DocuSign a spot for me to sign. So as I went through, I clicked all the initials, but I was looking at them like, there's no place for me to sign. So it was finished when I clicked the last initial, and I emailed the agent, said, you're going to want to load that document again and send it to me so I can sign it because it's unenforceable the way that you sent it to me. You want to get that 3% on that $700,000 sale, you better give it back to me so I can sign it. And we do the same thing in review. Dispute resolution is similar to what we see between the buyer and seller on an RPA. However, you will notice that there's no arbitration clause anymore. That's been removed. The long arm of the law has found their way to pull the listing brokerage into arbitration between a buyer and the seller because of the arbitration agreement between the seller and the brokerage that used to be there. There were a couple of cases where that happened, and the recommendation came down from the agents that we remove it, and so they did. So if there's a dispute between the seller and ourselves for some reason, and again, I've been doing this for 10 years, I've never seen it, but where the sellers come against us, I've seen us chase after a seller to get commission. But first step is mediation, just as same as we have with the RPA. And then the next step would be if it is less than $10,000, the amount being disputed is less than $10,000, it goes to small claims court, probate court, foreclosure, bankruptcy court supersede this agreement. So the government will take over in those instances. Paragraph 20, same as we see in the RPA, entire agreement. This is the entire agreement. Anything to add or take away from it needs to be done in writing. Paragraph 21, the seller warrants that they are the owner of the property. Nobody else needs to be signing on this. Nothing else needs to happen. And then if there's a representative capacity, again, we're going to have a whole class on that at the beginning of September, so I won't worry about that today. Seller signs it, you sign it. It does say broker and firm everywhere. You get to sign on behalf of the broker. There is a spot for me to initial on the RPA once I've reviewed, but you get to sign as on behalf of the brokerage as an agent. There's a seller's advisory. I always go through and recommend that they kind of give them a heads up. They're going to need to pay for an NHG, possibly. They'll need to provide a transfer disclosure statement. You want to leave that generally with them. Generally, one of the partners in a romantic relationship, there's usually one that's a detail-oriented person and one that could give a shit. Make sure that the one that's detail-oriented gets that TDS, SPQ, and see if they can engage the other one to help support do that. If there's death, meth, or weed, those are the 3 California state required disclosures that a seller needs to make. Death within 3 years, unless it was death by AIDS, in which case it's forever. I don't remember. We went through this on that risk management. I can't remember. You don't disclose AIDS, but you do have to disclose. There's one on suicide, I think, has a longer tail on it. Be ready for the method of death if somebody does die on the property, and the way to do that in a discreet way is to say that you need to see a copy of the death certificate. And then you can know what the death reason was. Thank you. Did you sign in, Owen?
Regardless of the date that an occupant of that property was afflicted with or died from isn't that what that is? So it is always.
3 years is the state mandated time period.
Or regardless of the date of occurrence. Does that mean we always or we never?
You always. Death is 3 years in California.
Yeah, under that. So the death has occurred more than 3 years prior. Oh, so they would. What?
Where am I? Your death is 3 years?
Yeah. Is it biological to disclose that a death occurred, however, the civil code provides that you have no disclosure. You have no disclosure duty when the death has happened over 3 years, or if they died from AIDS or AIDS related. The thing is that they don't actually die from AIDS. They die from heart failure, or they die from something else. So the way to make sure that you do that in a compliant way is to say, has somebody died in the property in the last 3 years? Yes? Great. Can you give me a copy? I need to see a copy of the death certificate. Because question number 1 that the buyer asked is, has anybody died? TDS has that, and then their agent is going to call you and go, what'd they die from? What happened? And do you have to have a copy of the death certificate?
I recommend that you do. That's the best way to find out how they died. Because they're going to want to know the method of death. If somebody was a suicide and they believe in ghosts and whatnot, and part of them stays behind on that spot, then you don't want to walk in your closet every time and go, ooh, he killed himself. You can ask, yes, but it's a sensitive thing in some instances. So, best way to do it and be discreet is to get a copy of the death certificate. They should have a copy of that for you. Okay, I'm over time. So if you guys want to hang around, you're welcome to. I am going to hit the interwebs here, and I'm going to show you where to go to hold from MLS, okay? And make sure you sign in if you were here in class. Okay, so we're showing on the MLS. You don't have to sign in to be able to get to this website. So this is crmls.org. And this is if you need to exclude from CRMLS. Down at the bottom of the page, you'll see, let's see if I can highlight it. Exclude listing CRMLS. We don't use Paragon. You can choose to use Paragon, but we never have up here. So we're CRMLS. Exclude listing CRMLS is on the bottom of the main page. You can save this document to your hard drive and have it available for you. You can pull it up into your iPad, fill it out with the pen and have them sign it and do all that kind of stuff. The form itself is here, seller's instructions to exclude, and we'll pull that up in just a second. It'll download. Is this sharing with those at home? Kim, can you see the exclude? She may not be listening. I'm going to hope she can see it. You're going to fill in the property address, listing period. The seller needs to initial each of the 3 paragraphs above saying excluding the property from the MLS limits your exposure. If you exclude your property from the MLS, you understand and acknowledge that real estate agents and other brokers from other offices who participate in this MLS won't have an opportunity to see it, and it will impact your days on market, potentially, depending on how we fill out the following 4 paragraphs. Okay, so the top 3 they initial regardless. Those are disclosures for them. This is what happens when you hold it from the MLS. One of the following 4 paragraphs needs to be initial because this deals with marketing. The property is going to be marketed. You can?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. So you're going to market the property but not submit it to the MLS to a particular day. Obviously, once you start marketing, that days on market is going to start. So if you've got the pocket listing for 30 days, you're going to try and sell it yourself, or you're going to sell it within the office as an office exclusive. Sometimes you'll see those sign writers, office exclusive. That's what that means. It's being marketed. And so when that property goes live on the MLS for the rest of the world, it shows up with 30 days on market. That's why. Or do not market the property until it's submitted to the MLS on a particular day. And you better well not hang a sign in front of that property. Don't give out any flyers. Don't whisper to a friend in the hallway that's like zip the lip and not market the property until it goes on the market. This is the instance where they're going to paint the property. They're going to fix the broken gate at the front or whatever they're going to do for however long they need to do it. They say, I want to list this. I'm going to list the property and then I'm going to go to Europe. My nephew's going to come in and paint the entire house. We're going to put it live on the market 30 days after. Let's hope the nephew's good at what he does. They're going to stay in Europe. Fine. We're going to do that. We'll manage the nephew, make sure he does his thing, and then we put it live in 30 days. If we don't market it, the days on market show up as 0. If we do market it, then it shows up as 1 or however many days you got. Or do not market the property until a specific date. Thereafter, the listing will be submitted to the MLS. So you sign on the 1st. They say hold it off the MLS for 30 days, but don't market it for the first 15. Then at 15, go ahead and start marketing it and then put it live to the rest of the world on the 30th of September, say. Or don't submit the property to the MLS during the entire listing period. This is the kind of thing you'll see sometimes in Santa Barbara. My friends down in Beverly Hills see these on a pretty regular basis. There are some MLS alternatives starting to pop up down there, mypocketlisting.com, things like that you can be a member of. There are some invite-only Facebook groups for these high-end agents to swap deals back and forth and try and find buyers for high-end properties and properties that you need to be discreet about. Because once it hits the MLS, everybody knows about it. TMZ will grab it and say, so-and-so fancy person is putting their house on the market. And they may not want that to happen. So if you have somebody that is a high-profile figure, they want to sell, but they don't necessarily want it to be on the MLS at all, that's kind of the reason for that. It's a true pocket listing. The MLS frowns on that. State of California doesn't like it either because you're really not doing the job that you could do to market it to the whole wide world. You get that property signed, get the document signed about this particular property, and then you save it as a PDF, and you go back to the CRMLS website, and you input the information in these fields, and then you go to next, if it lets me. And then you are going to attach this document. So you're going to say, I have the exclusion form from CRMLS. And then you go next. And then you're going to say, this is the box that they filled in. If it'll let you fill it in. So mark the property, but do not submit until, and then you pick your particular date. Okay. A little bit of work, a little bit of homework on this form. And then you're going to fill that in. And then you're going to go to next. Let's see if it'll let me. Yes, and then you're going to select the file so they have a copy of that signed document from the seller, and you're going to upload it to the MLS, to them. And it'll have the property address, seller signature. So you're essentially filling out the form and the details from the form on these fields from the page, on the page, and then you upload the document, and then you're good to go. If the property is in Nipomo, you're going to put it in more than one MLS. The Santa Maria MLS or North Santa Barbara County MLS uses this SELM, which is a very limiting form, and it's not as detailed as this. They don't accept the CRMLS form, so you would technically have your people sign 2 to hold it from the MLS in that case. Make sense? The SELM used to work for CRMLS. It doesn't anymore. It can be a placeholder, but you have 30 days to get, I think it's 30 days, maybe it's 15 days, to get the CRMLS form. So if you happen to stumble out there, or your assistant or your TC gives you the SELM and says, this is what you use to hold from MLS, and you get it signed, and then you upload it to this site, and then it's going to kick a trigger for you to get the CRMLS form because it has higher level of data. And you can technically protect the days on market if that's what your plan is to do.
And always send me a copy.
Good idea. Send it to DC. Don't send it to me. Send it to DC. So KLRW340@kw.com. DC's email. Okay, good. So those of you who are here live, I have a book I'm going to give away today. This is The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, the initial publishing. This was given to me by Alan Williams, who is the founder of Keller Williams Realty Central Coast. So those of you who are here, you get the be the lucky winner of having the Alan Williams copy of MREA. Let's get something we can draw from. Send that around.
Hey, grab a card.
Okay, go get a card. Okay, I'm going to upload. I don't think I swore or said anything disparaging about anybody, so I'm going to upload this entire thing today and post it on the KWCC broker channel on YouTube. So you have questions about the RLA, then you can go there and get them. Any questions from those listening? Anybody here have any questions about what we went over? The only thing we didn't have time to touch on is the RCSD representative capacity. So if you're listing a property for a trust, which is the most common, or power of attorney, or a corporation, or an LLC, some sort of entity, then we're going to go over that on the September 5th, 6th, 5th? What is that, Wednesday? First Wednesday of September. We're meeting back here the first Wednesday of September. We've got the entire month of August off. Kids are going back to school, things are sideways, nobody shows up anyway, so we're going to show up in September. Wednesday the 3rd?
I think Labor Day is the 1st.
We'll be back. Okay, if there's no questions.
September 4th.
Everybody has their cards in here. DC, do you have a card in here? You can win too. Okay, so I'm going to put this behind my back here. And our lucky winner, Teresa Rubin. Hey, Rubin, come on down. She wins a lot. Something about her business cards. Maybe they're sticky. Congratulations. Okay, guys, I'm going to be going to London for 10 days starting Friday. So my autoresponder will tell you where and when to go, but Scott Hagewood can help answer questions. Molly ostensibly can help with a few. If you have legal or contract questions, go to Car Legal, and Kate Graham, I give you her phone number in the email responder. Kate Graham's going to handle broker support kind of stuff for me while I'm gone. I will have my phone, but it's 8 hours different over there. And by about the 3rd day there, I'm not going to even answer my phone anymore. I probably won't care.
No problem.
So it's my first real vacation in 10 years. So look forward to it. Okay, we're good. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in September.
Marty did email me that, and the BCO came in at 4:45.
Congratulations. I'm proud of you.
Thanks, Kim.
Bye-bye.
Did it. All right, we'll see you in a month.